So the first thing I'd like you to do is launch Excel and just create a simple spreadsheet in this format. In cell A1, type the word month. In cell B1, type the word sales. Down the A column, starting in January, just do a quick abbreviated month through May or June, and then make up some figures. You can use these if you like, or whatever you like, to go down in B2 down through at least B6. At that point, we'll have just a classic two-dimensional data set, and we're going to take that then and we're going to make a chart with it. So, how do we make a chart? Once we have our data in Excel, we're going to select the range of cells that contain the data. We're going to click on Insert in the ribbon, click on Column and choose 2D Column, and then wait while the chart is created. Alright, let's go through that process. So, here's our data. I'm going to click on Month, which is the furthest uppermost left-hand part of the data, and then I'm going to go down to the last sales figure I have, and I'm going to Shift Select this range of cells. There's other ways of selecting a range of cells, but this is the easiest and safest. Now we're going to go to the Insert menu in the ribbon, choose Column, and a 2D column. Now our chart is generated. Notice that sales, the title, it takes itself from the data it's charting, which in this case is the dollar figure of sales. We can change that at will. We don't have to leave it thus. We can call it whatever we want. It doesn't really matter. Now, let's look at some interesting things about this. For instance, let's say I get updated data. Do I need to do anything to this chart? Am I going to have to generate a new chart, in other words, just because I need to modify my data? Well, no. Excel updates the chart dynamically as our data gets updated. So notice that we have seriously declining sales this year. Also notice that we have the ability, and when we're in the chart tools from the Insert menu here, we have the ability to switch the rows and the columns. So now notice that I'm using the months as my legend. When I switch it back, then sales is over here in my legend, and I'm looking at this. This would be more important if I had multiple series that I was trying to look at. So speaking of multiple series, let's do something else. Let's add some expenses. So I'm going to say that this month we spent that much money, this month we spent that much money, and so on and so forth. Alright. Now I have two series. I've got sales and expenses for any given month. Let's select those three ranges. Go to the Insert menu, choose Column, and let's choose a 3D column chart this time. Now I can see my sales are represented this way, expenses are in red below. Now let's switch the row and data. Now you'll notice that by doing this, the months are grouped, over here color-coded, and the sales and expenses are separated out. So this can be very handy when we start looking at more complex data sets to switch the rows and columns until we find something that makes the most sense to us and or our audience. One more thing I'd like to call your attention to. Notice that we already know one way to move the chart by right-clicking on the chart and simply choosing Move Chart. But notice that there's also a Move Chart button up here in the upper right of the ribbon anytime we're in the Design under Chart Tools. And if we click on that, it actually brings us to the same menu that we had when we right-click on the chart itself. Alright, finally, I said we'd look at line charts and see how they differ. Notice that here is an example of that same data set presented with a line chart. The nice thing about the line chart is we can extrapolate data between these months and see trends that aren't. So if I want to know right in between January and February, in other words, the middle of January, where were our sales figures likely to be, well, I can easily look at my chart and project any time in between these two. So this can become very nice because it can point out certain trend lines and other things that are more difficult to see with those static data sets. Finally, pie charts. Pie charts are have a very restricted use, and they get used a lot more than they probably should. A pie chart is really only valid when you're charting some part of a whole, some percentage. Otherwise, for instance, look at our sales chart. This makes absolutely no sense. Perhaps if this was a whole year and we wanted to see what month had the biggest slice of the entire year, but this isn't even an entire year. It's a subset. So really, this doesn't show us anything that it wouldn't just as easily be seen, or maybe even better, with a column chart or a line chart. The other problem with the pie chart that we'll look at very quickly here is pie charts work great if we're charting one series. So here's a pie chart. Great. Even though, as we said, this isn't necessarily very useful data, but we can see that it looks like January had the lion's share of the profits for this particular segment of time. But what if we try the same trick with two series of data, the sales and the expenses? Well, now if I go to Insert, Pie Chart, here's a problem. All I see is sales. Well, there's no other way to represent this with just a pie chart. And you can see if I take the data set for sales and I delete it, then it reveals the expenses which are hidden underneath it. If you really like the pie chart format, there is a chart type that will do multiple series of data. It is called the donut. It's available under Other Charts and under Donut. And it shows, you notice that rather than a single pie, it's actually two circles in concentric rings, and it can show as many series as you want. It just adds another concentric ring. This can be useful for certain things, and it's certainly the only way to make something that has the same format as a pie chart that will let you view multiple series of data.